Hello! In this video, I'd like to talk about the G903 Lightspeed. It's one of the larger ambidextrous mice I've used, and even in 2024, I still think it's a great mouse not only for gaming, but also for productivity. The current version of the G903 uses the Hero sensor. As far as I know, there are older versions that uses the 3366 sensor, which is still an amazing sensor, but it's not as refined as Logitech's Hero sensor in terms of battery efficiency. Now, often this begs the question, how are you able to differentiate between the Hero version or the 3366 version? One research that I've done indicates that if you look at the bottom of your G903 and it does not have the Lightspeed listed on it, that would be the 3366 sensor. However, if you were to go to Logitech's website and you look at the G903, you're able to find an image that does not have the Lightspeed on the base of the mouse. However, it would still list that it uses the Hero 25K sensor. Regardless, for users who are looking to buy a G903 in 2024, if you were to purchase them from reputable sites like Amazon or Best Buys, chances are you'd be fine. There's also a very similar situation with the G703 too. The first variation of the G703 that we know and love is named the G403 Wireless. It featured the 3366 sensor and it weighs roughly 20 grams more. Then later comes the first iteration of the G703, which uses the 3366 sensor. And then we have the newest one with the Hero sensor. However, for the G703 and the G903 that uses the 3366 sensor isn't manufactured anymore. One thing many loved about the Hero sensor is the battery efficiency. Since the G903 carries a 750 mAh battery, it is rated up to 180 hours of battery life with the RGB turned off. Logitech gaming mice are praised not only for their incredible accuracy and top-tier performance, but also how efficient their battery life is. There are a decent amount of rendition of the Hero sensor. The first would be the Hero 12K, which are featured in the G603 and the G305. Then the Hero 16K, which is featured in the older version of the G Pro Wireless and the G Pro Hero. Logitech would then go on and make the Hero 25K, which is featured in the G502, G703, G903, and the famous G Pro X Superlight. As of making this video, Logitech has created and implemented the Hero 2 sensor featured in the newest flagship, aptly named G Pro X Superlight 2. I'll definitely review that in another video, as there are many aspects of the G Pro X Superlight 2 which is praiseworthy, and some not so much. Performance-wise, the G903 tracking and motion delay feels like it has roughly the same responsiveness as my G Pro X Superlight and my G Pro Wireless. But there are other variables that makes it a slightly better mouse in my opinion regarding the physical construction of the mouse. The clicks are much easier to engage compared to the G Pro X Superlight or the G Pro Wireless. This might be due to the fact that the paddles are much denser and weigh more than the paddles of the G Pros. The Omron 20 millions are also fantastic switches that requires moderate pressure to activate. Each click feels more premium to actuate and require less force, as the heavy paddles do have to push for you. The Omron 20 million are fantastic switches that require light pressure to actuate. According to the website listed below, the force required to actuate a Omron 20 million switch is around 0.59 newtons. That, along with the dense rigid paddles, and also the shorter paddle plungers, allow for quicker and more responsive clicks. This design choice is also featured in the G303, and the activation clicks of the G303 is probably the best I've ever experienced. Unfortunately, there are some flaws. The back of the paddle features magnets for the rear housing. Also features two large holes where the screw is supposed to go into. Despite tightening the two screws, the paddles still wobble. This is merely nitpicking as it doesn't affect gameplay at all. A pro that I have for the G903 is the housing. Logitech decided to use full plastics for the housing and didn't use rubber injection molding plastics like the G502. I say this is a great choice as rubberized anything will wear off. Similar to my previous video explaining why I prefer the G603 over my G703. Still, the mouse is bulbous at the rear end, and quite prominent too. I do wish Logitech can make an interchangeable shells that flattens the rear hump. As someone who used the newer G502X Lightspeed, I still find myself going back to the metallic scrolls featured in the older G502 and the G903. The newer scroll wheel in the G502 series feels like it's half plastic and half metallic. it simply doesn't feel premium when it's lacking in weight. The older version of the scroll wheel system feels very good, and it also doubles as a fidget toy. However, due to the weight of the scroll wheel, it's pretty common that I engage the tilt function by accident. The scroll wheel uses optical sensors, meaning users don't have to worry about mechanical scrolling code or issues in the future. Much like the G Pro wireless, the G903 used magnets to house the interchangeable side buttons. It's a very good design choice, but much like the G Pro, there's a decent amount of pre-travel in order to engage the side buttons. To me, that's not that big of a problem as I engage both left and right side of the buttons for productivity purposes. The G903 is a hefty mouse, 110 grams without the extra 10 gram weight. Having a slew of other gaming mice that is much lighter, I can only argue that the G903 feels absolutely premium to use. However, one thing to kind of note is that squeaks can develop over time in the front portion of the sidewalls. There are a lot of interconnected parts that make up the G903. It is surely difficult to avoid no matter how skilled the designer or engineer is. The G703 suffer much less squeaking because the main body is one complete set piece along with incredibly thick sidewalls reinforced with rubber injection molds. The G903 unfortunately is not. It is connected by two lower front sidewalls and a rear housing. One can attempt to alleviate the squeaking issue by sticking electrical tape over the lower connection of the front two sidewalls, and to lubricate the screw holes where the plastics connect with things like keyboard lube. Regardless, the main housing is solid with barely any flexing, and the minor squeaking really doesn't bother me at all. One possible big con is the middle switch buttons. It uses 4mm by 4mm tactile button switches. My unit was bought in 2020. Fortunately, it hasn't failed on me, but for the ones that do need replacement, this will be a little bit more difficult to replace compared to your regular micro switches. In conclusion, I do believe that the G903 is still a fantastic buy even in 2024. It has great features such as the wider array of buttons which help with productivity and casual gaming. There's a trend where other brands would use other mechanical switches from Kale, TTC, or Juanos. However, I still stand by that Omron 20 millions are so great for the middle ground between tactility, stiffness, and spammability when implemented correctly. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.